Uh, Many people would tell you that it was, if not the one of her favorite poems. And while Maya Angelou has done so much, while she has written so much and is known for so much, when you mention her name, "Still I Rise" are the words that come up. One of the things that I love is, even though the words may be in it, it's not "but still I rise." It's known as "Still I Rise," right? It puts no focus on whatever is happening prior to. The bottom line is, I have bounce back power. And I think that is vitally important. And Rabbi Siegel could not have chosen better examples for this, our third and final coming together in this series. When you look at this poem and think about it, this poem is really about defeat and survival. It's really about overcoming adversity. And both of our communities have absolutely done that. And we clearly see the need to continue to keep the "Still I Rise" message and mantle and mantra. I think one of the things that Maya did for Black people was, with this poem and so much more of her work, was helped us to understand that we have to develop coping strategies in the midst of adversity, right? That is a really, really big thing for us. How do we thrive? How do we survive? And what I love about the poem is it also gives a tremendous sense of self-respect, confidence. Everybody right now, either say it out loud or write it in the chat, say confidence.
Confidence.
It's what we have to have. Confidence, courage to face things. And I'll close with a very simple story. There was a story of a man who had gotten tired of his donkey. And when he got tired of his donkey, he decided to dig a ditch and lead the donkey into this ditch. That donkey died. But then in another story, he said, since I did it the first time with the donkey, let me do it with a sheep. And then the sheep, same thing, led to a ditch. And every single day, this owner of this farm would go and take some dirt and throw it over on top of this sheep. And about 3 weeks later, he noticed that the same sheep that he had thought he buried was walking around in the field. What he did not know is, while he was not looking, every time he would dump dirt on top of that sheep would just pack the dirt under its feet and then begin to rise back to the top. And that's what I love about this poem. It helps us to understand, in the midst of adversity, in the midst of challenge, and regardless of who tries to take you down, if you have the mindset, "Still I rise," you can certainly bounce back in ways that no one ever thought you could. And that's been the story of African American and Jewish people. Pretty amazing to me. And when you think about this poem, I ask you, put in the chat right now what you thought of not only the poem, but also of the rabbi speaking before Dr. King. What did you take away from that messaging? Start putting some of that in the chat. If it's one word, 2 words, a sentence, a phrase that comes to your mind from that messaging, please do me a favor, blow the chat up now and start sharing what it is that you received from it. Rachel said, celebrating who you are. James Mallett said, togetherness. Another person said, raising your voice. What would you take away from what you witnessed, what you saw? Ben said, the promise of the United States. Oh my goodness, I love it. Melanie said, we can't just be onlookers. Powerful. And then Alice says, eloquence, celebrating history. I love it, Barry. Thanks for this. The true spirit of America. And then you have Sherry saying resilience. Barbara said hope. Taylor, everything he said is still relevant now. Someone called Beautiful D, strength, powerful. Jay, we have more in common than we know. That's exactly right. Barry says resilience, the challenge to speak up. We talked about that before. Irene, wanting to do more. And last but not least, Nation, nothing can keep us down. Stan, Crystal, awareness. Naomi, I love it. A feeling of optimism. And that's exactly right. We cannot be silent in that. And that's what we have to focus on. Our role. What is our job? We know what they did. As I pass it back over to Rabbi, the question becomes today, what will we do? Again, what will we do? Well, let's think about one more thing. The long road to freedom. Rabbi, what say you?
I think the first step, and I really was very moved by both, but as a Jew watching Rabbi Prince, what I kept thinking about was his trajectory, coming from Berlin, witnessing the Holocaust, coming to this country, building a new life, and the ability not to relate to the African-American experience per se, but the experience of being a stranger when the world is silent. Being a stranger when the world is silent. And so I can never fully understand your experience, Chris. But what I do understand is what it means to be a stranger and what it means to join hands for redemption together and walk on that road. And it's that step of saying, I can't be silent anymore, that I think is the glue, if you will, that brings us together.
Yeah, to deal with that glue, we then, Michael, have to touch on brokenness, right? You don't need glue if there's nothing broken. And one of the things that I love is we have refused all these years now to not ignore the divide, not to ignore the brokenness, not to ignore the traumatic experiences. And we certainly, like so many people, can focus on how different we are. We can focus on how different our experiences are, but what do we have in common? Brokenness, this idea of brokenness. What does Exodus tell us about the brokenness within? For example.
And what happens to people when they feel broken inside? What happens to us? And so we're going to read some texts, and we're going to talk about them as we go through them. And we're going to be looking to the chat to kind of get some of your responses as well. But can I look to Krishna, as Amy, as you put up the our readings for tonight? Can I look to Krishna to read the first one, which really speaks to the mental scars of slavery? And as Krishna reads, and I hope that's okay that I called on you, what I'd like to suggest is that we go back to something that Pastor Harris talked about, I think at the first session, which is a book up called Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder. Because I think you're going to see the very first case of it here. It extends throughout time. So Krishna, can I look to you?
Amy, can you enlarge that a bit for us?
Okay.
Krishna, are you there? See if you can unmute.
All right. Well, Krishna, we're going to come back to you, but how about Crystal Savage? Can you read?
Unmute.
Okay, you're there. Here you are. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, there. Oh, okay. There it is. I was trying to unmute it, but I don't think I could have. I think someone had to unmute me.
There we go.
Right. It's a
Okay.
the whole new meaning of silence. On Zoom. Right.
Okay, so I am looking. It is so tiny. I was going to try to bring it up on mine. That's Exodus 6:9. I do have Exodus 6 and 6 and 6. Mine starts off differently. It's so tiny. I'm trying to read that.
Okay.
I'll
My-
try.
Go ahead.
Okay. Then the
Chris, I
Lord
made
said
you-
unto Moses, huh? No. Oh. Then the Lord said unto Moses, now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand shall he, oh, it got smaller. With a strong, oh, it got even smaller.
There you go. Here
There
we
we
go.
go.
Okay, that's better. Great. We're going to leave it right there.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. That's all I got to say. Amen. And hallelujah.
Okay. All right. The mental scars of slavery, Exodus 6 through 9. Then the Lord said unto Moses, now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. And God spake unto Moses, and said unto him, I am the Lord. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name of God Almighty. But by my name, Jehovah, was I not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them, to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians kept in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm and with great judgments. And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God, which bringeth you out from under the burdens of Egyptians. And I will bring you in unto the land, concerning the which I did swear to give it to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And I will give it to you for an heritage. I am the Lord. And Moses spake so unto the children of Israel. But they hearkened not unto Moses for anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage.
Okay,
Moses-
Christian, I
okay.
want you to stop there.
Okay.
Now, first of all, what would it take for you to come to Anshiama? Because I need somebody to read as well as you do with that kind of passion. So I don't know how many draft choices it's going to take, but anytime you want to come, you're reading. So look, this is
Do better, but that was a cold read. I could do better.
okay. Well, okay, there you go. All right. Well, you've passed the audition. I can tell you that. So verse 9 is the key to understand this. I just wanted to let you know that there are, if you could just scroll down for 1 second, Amy, just scroll down, go up. I should say go up. There you go. Slow down a little bit more. Okay, just stop here. Okay. This wasn't a good idea. Let's go back to where we were, verse 9. Okay, I'm sorry about that. This is like, this is what if I was waking up from the dream, so man, what a nightmare that was. Okay, Amy, and believe me, Amy is amazing and she's doing her best. This is not fun. I've had this happen. Stop. Okay, so in the translation of the King James Version, I want you to watch this. It says, but they hearkened not to Moses for anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage. Okay, that's the translation. It's a fine translation. Robert Alter is an amazing Bible scholar, and he just put out a translation of the same of the Bible. And I looked at his text. I want to look at this with you. Okay, so what does he say? And Moses spoke thus to the Israelites, but they did not heed Moses out of shortness of breath and hard bondage. Shortness of breath. And scroll down a little bit more, please, Amy. So this is what Alter's note said. His note in the translation reads, the Hebrew word ruach, it's kashat ruach is the Hebrew, right? Ruach can mean breath, wind, or spirit. So he's saying this translation follows the plain meaning of the word, shortness of a breath. As a result of slaves groaning, crying out under hard bondage. This condition made it all the harder by Moses's bungled intervention. Remember, Moses jumps in and the Pharaoh says, we're going to take away the straw, and they're working harder and they have to make more bricks, and they can hardly catch their breath, and they're in no mood to listen to Moses, right? Who has time to listen to these lofty words? Who has time to listen to anything when you are being tortured by labor, and where you to the point that where you're so overwhelmed that you can barely breathe? And I think that's such a great translation. What does it mean to be broken when you can't? Well, part of it is that you can't look anywhere else. Where you can't look anywhere else. It can also mean impatience. It can also mean crushed spirit. But here, I think this amazing translation of the shortness of breath, right? And you know, and Taylor, I just watched this go across the screen, but you know, George Floyd, right? It's not hard to see the connection here about, you know, what does a society do to break you? Where you feel so winded, I can't breathe. Who can worry? Who can do anything more? And that, you know, I just had to put that in because I was thinking the same thing, Taylor, that this connection. And Chris, I don't know if you have a response to that, but I just think it's so pertinent.
Yeah, certainly. And you did a fantastic job as always preparing this lesson. And I got to tell you, from the Black experience, losing our breath, George Floyd, losing our breath, racism, losing our breath, a pandemic called COVID-19 that has exacerbated everything that Black people have been dealing with. And who died the most, right? Not that there's a comparison, but how has it impacted the Black community, the Black and brown community? It's been amazing. And shortness of breath. I think one of the things that you blessed me with, Rabbi, in our studies, which is why I'm so grateful for our connection, is one time we were studying and we talked about the fact that when Officer Chauvin took the breath of George Floyd, he literally was sinning against God. Because when God created man, what did he do? He breathed into man the breath of life. So the shortness of breath that George Floyd experienced, I believe, literally touched God, right? And it's pretty amazing how even this word ruach, right? Breath, wind, spirit. And here it is, you finally have the United States, of course, the rest of the world, but the United States asking, can we take the mask off? Because the very thing that you're saying will keep us breathing is causing us to struggle to have good breath under the mask.
Right. Let me just add, and I'm picking up on something that Abe Trigger put into the chat, but when you think about the bills that are being introduced by the Georgia Republicans restricting voter access, and all over the country, these kinds of returns to Jim Crow is a way of choking off the breath of democracy.
That's right.
From communities. So there, you know, there is more than one way to choke someone. There's more than one way to take their spirit away. There's more than one way to try and crush their spirit. And I think we're kind of seeing that the children of Israel, here's this lofty promise, and who can think about it right now? I can't hear you when I can't breathe, right? I'm just trying to stay alive right now, right?
Hmm. And imagine if you Google, thank you, Melanie, for the reminder that it wasn't just George Floyd who said I couldn't breathe, right? Eric Garner and so many others. If you just Google the term, I can't breathe, Black men, especially in regard to connection to police brutality. Same thing. When Black people were hung, put the noose around the neck. And what did it affect? The breathing of the individual.
Right.
And the suffering that went with the pain was intentional. And it is rather challenging. And I think it's so important that we continue to focus on the fact that life is connected to that breath.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the second text.
Yep.
Because what happens with this crushed spirit? What happens next, right? What does God demand of the people, right? Then, okay, I was going to call on Crystal. Can you read for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Listen, I just have to tell you that Krishna really set a high bar, so we're
I know. I'm really
Thanks for you,
scared to go
Crystal.
behind her.
big things.
Okay, so then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of,
Hyssop.
what's that one? Hyssop?
Hyssop, right?
Hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two sides posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass when ye come to the land which the Lord will give you, according as hath promised, and ye shall keep the service. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshiped.
Thank
And
you.
the children.
I'm going to stop you here.
Okay.
And by the way, you, I'm inviting you also, Town Shamma, to be a
Thank
reader
you.
for us. And so I know I can see Pastor Harris getting a little nervous over there. So here, let's get back. Let me ask you a question, and I'd love to see your answers in the chat, right? Why, if God is God and God is all knowing, why does God command them to mark their doorposts with blood? Doesn't God know where these people are? Does God really need them to sacrifice a lamb? Does God really need to mark their doorpost, or God's going to make a mistake? What's behind this idea of marking the doorposts? Anybody have a thought about that?
You don't get marked wrong for your answers. Go ahead and share. Michael Rachel said, it is a sign of commitment. Oh, she asked the question, is it a sign of commitment that they have heard, that they are listening?
So part of it is, okay, I'm going to build on Rachel for a second, because it is a statement to a slave people that they have to be part of their own redemption. They have to, and so let me tell you something that you might not know, that the lamb was venerated in Egypt. So for a Israelite to take a lamb and slaughter it publicly and then put the blood on the doorpost was them breaking free from the Egyptian culture, but taking the ultimate risk, a risk of faith to go forward. So in a sense, the redemption, as Jay was saying, was meant to be an active, not passive act. You have to, God's saying to the Israelites, you don't want to be a slave anymore? Fine. Then you have to take responsibility for your own redemption, right? If you're going to sit and be, a broken spirit, if you're going to be out of breath to the point you can't do anything, then you can't be free. This isn't a magic carpet ride, right? I'm not going to snap the divine fingers and put you in Canaan. No, you have to be part of this. And I think that this is such a powerful, powerful lesson. It is a sign of obedience. It is this idea that you are, that you are aligning yourself with God, right? So it is the symbolism of that. And for sure, Krishna, it is an act of rebellion. And it shows that it's an act of faith, because in that society, that could be a capital offense. They had to stand up and they had to separate themselves from Egyptian culture, which constantly saw them as being less than human. And they had to reach out and attach themselves to something bigger than themselves, something higher, and something, as Ruth Rouse says, to stand up for yourself. What a powerful statement this is about how do we deal with our brokenness. We can do nothing, or we can be part of our own redemption. Let's go on to the next text.
And also add, when you think about it from the Christian perspective, clergy love this passage because it absolutely also is a sign of sacrifice of that which is innocent, right? And when there's a connection between the Old Testament lamb slain, right? The blood of a lamb, or the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. In the New Testament, for us, Jesus becomes the lamb that is sacrificed. Blood is also shed. And based on what we believe as Christians, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin, right? That sacrifice piece, which is abundantly amazing. It is also a sign, right? A sign of that sacrifice, of that which is innocent. Covering, it also represents from the Christian perspective. And here it is, the death angel now respects and regards the sign of the blood and passes over the people. Amazing.
It is amazing. I just have to pick up on what Melanie Brown wrote. She wrote, like Abel's blood cried out from the ground, blood holds a remembrance. And I think that's such a powerful image, because in a very real way, what Cain was doing was he was responding to his inner voice, the voice of jealousy and hatred, and acted and drew blood from his brother. What's God asking for the Israelites? It's to listen outward to a larger voice and align yourself with that. Blood has a power all its own, but it depends on what our intention is. That makes all the difference. One can be a sacrifice, one can be a sanctification of God's name, or it can be a desecration of God's name. But I think we need to move on to the next text, or we're going to be here till Passover or Easter or both. And I would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't just acknowledge what Pastor Harris is saying, because the Lamb of God is understood in Christian terminology as Jesus, right? So the connection here is very powerful. So this year, Jews are going to be celebrating Passover, and they're going to be talking about this passage, and Christians are going to be celebrating Easter at the exact same time, talking about this exact same passage. Could you talk just a little bit about that? Because I think it's so important. I don't want to let the opportunity go by.
Sure, absolutely. When you think about Easter, or what we know as Resurrection Sunday, and thank you for that acknowledgement, Rabbi, it is the very principle and the foundation by which the Christian faith and belief is built upon, that Jesus came as the Son of God, as the Passover lamb that was sacrificed for the sins of the world. And our main scripture, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And as we celebrate not just Good Friday, or what some would call, let's go back, Palm Sunday, the entrance of Jesus into the holy city, and then Holy Week, all that week long, and then what people call Good Friday, but I would assume Jesus wouldn't call it one, since it's the time that he was killed and murdered and maimed and beaten, and then died upon the cross, and then was buried. And then on that third day, that Sunday, which is Resurrection Day, he rose with all power in his hand, ascending to the Father, coming back to receive us at the rapture. That's powerful. And as we focus on Jesus's resurrection on Easter Sunday, the Passover meal, the Passover lamb, it's a powerful thing from my perspective that we'll be celebrating it around the same exact time, right? Acknowledging around the same exact time. And what a wonderful, wonderful story that in many ways connect us.
Exactly. And just because I want to come back to brokenness, whether you're a Jew or you're a Christian, the lamb is that which redeems us from brokenness.
Yes.
Stories, the stories may diverge, but
Yep.
it's really the same idea of the blood being the means to redemption.
Yeah. I mean, how powerful is that? A Jewish tradition, helping to teach the Christian perspective with that analogy, that symbolism, just blows my mind every time I think about it.
Right. All right, Pastor, your turn.
As we look at Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, I want to just very, very briefly ask folks to read these passages. Just really quickly, Sherry Morgan, do you mind chiming in and read for us verse 17? If you unmute, hold on, I'll unmute you, go for it.
Okay, 13:17.
Yep.
And it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and they return to Egypt.
And as we move up to number 4, thank you so much, Sherry. We're passing our reading awards tonight. You guys are rocking it. I'm going to ask Jay Lukowitz. I think I got it right. Jay,
You did.
if you'll read, I got it right. Thank you.
You did.
Rabbi Siegel, I'll be looking for my award for getting that right.
That was good. That was good.
Would
I
you
got the
read
simple.
for us this Numbers chapter 11, verse 11?
And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp.
Wow. And as we move up, even one more, I'm going to ask, scroll down a little bit. Let me see. Hold on.
Let's look at verse 4. The mixed multitudes, they said, where's the meat? Where's the flesh to eat?
Mm-hmm. Verse 4, read it for us. Sydney, I loved your glasses, so go for it.
And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish, which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills, or beat it in a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased.
Hmm.
And Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth the suckling child, unto the land which thou swearest unto their fathers?
And Sydney, let me thank you so much. Let me just say, Rabbi, I couldn't help but notice, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I couldn't help but notice it seems as if Moses takes this personal.
You think? You think? You think?
You know,
You know, okay, so let me take your question, and as in a very Jewish style, I'm going to turn it into a question to you.
come on.
Okay. You put yourself in Moses' place for a minute.
Yes.
He's taken them out of Egypt. He split the sea, right? And they're eating in the desert manna, right? Every day. It comes from the sky. It's there for them. They don't have to work for it. It's there for them. And then they get sick of eating it, okay? And they say, I really miss the home cooking in Egypt. I mean, that's what he said. That's what he's saying, right? God, that fish was so good. Maybe we should go back, right? Right? If you were Moses in that moment, how would you feel?
Yeah.
As a leader, as a person who, how would you feel? What would you do with that?
So I think a couple of things. Number one, first of all, the responsibility of leadership is, first of all, enough stress and trauma. I wouldn't want to be Moses, right? And then secondly, I'm living off of a promise, and now I'm struggling with provision. That is a challenge, right? I'm trusting you, God. You've brought us thus far. Why do we have to deal with something else? My grandmother would often say, when it rains, it pours. If it's not one thing, it is another, right? But how we tend to sometimes become dissatisfied. He said, think about what you just said. I'd rather go back to the good old days, right? The good old home cooked meals. And I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, when times get bitter, have we ignored when things have gotten better, right? When things get tough, how do we take that? And what I found interesting about it is Moses made it all about him, right?
That's exactly
God,
right.
haven't I done this? And I think when we get in these situations,
Did I
we
birth
read
them?
our resume. We
Right,
read our
right,
resume to God.
Right. Not that you, by the way, as a clergyman, would ever know what that feels like to be.
Of course not.
Never, because I know I never have felt that ever. But what bothers me so much about Moses is that he doesn't, where God doesn't destroy them for this.
That's right.
God gives them the meat, right?
Yeah.
Gives them so much they kind of choke on it. But God gives them quail till they're piling up. What's the point that Moses missed? How does their response to this manna, how does it speak to their brokenness, right?
Hmm.
And what you're really looking at, I think, is a people who have forgotten what it feels like to trust,
Yes.
right? They don't trust anything. And if they don't give, the fear is that they're gonna have to eat this forever, and they don't feel with the greatness of the moment, because all that mattered to them back in when they were slaves and what they grew up with was just being able to eat a little bit and to taste something, and so you see how ephemeral, you see how quickly they go, that how hard it is to throw off that slave mentality. I know Holocaust survivors who when they would go and eat, they would put food away and put it in their pocket.
Hmm.
These are people who could have afforded it, but they would, because they never knew. They always were afraid that they were going to lose the meal, that what would happen next. And so this sense of kind of not trusting is so much a part of this story. And I have a feeling that that's also part of the Black experience too.
Sure, of course. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, when we struggle, and I don't even think this is just a specific community, when we struggle and go through trouble, we tend to ask God 3 questions. Or for some people, ask the universe, as they say. Why me? Why this? And why now?
Mhm.
Right? Those 3 questions tend to come up over and over again. And I'd like everybody to take a moment and take your right hand, put your right hand right in front of your face. Right in front of your face. Cover your eyes, just don't touch them. Right? Now, what can you see? Right, what's in front of you. But take that same hand and just pull it back. Right? Keep it in front of you, but pull it back. Now you can see so much more. Right? And that which looked like it was so huge, a mountain right upon you, blocked your vision. As grandmama would say, you can't see for looking. But if you step back from the circumstance that's right in front of you, you tend to see that it's not as big as you thought it was, right? Just think about this complaint that they're levying against God, and it does show a little bit of entitlement, right? Okay, it does show a little bit of unthankfulness, but I like exactly what you said, Rabbi, trusting God, right? It's could we deal with these kinds of things in a different kind of way? But it does feel personal sometimes when God allows various things to happen. And the same thing with slavery in the Black community. My goodness, God, right? The same thing with racism that we deal with today. My goodness, God, yet another thing. But some people would also say, well, hey, Black people, you got a Black president, didn't you? Well, Black people, you got a Black vice president, didn't you? Look like you guys are doing pretty good. And the reality is that's good, but I'll hit you with Daenu.
Right. It's not enough for us. Exactly right. It's not enough. That's very, very well done. I want to come back to what Alice is saying, but what I'm hearing in Michelle Ann's statement, I mean, the Israelites were victims of slavery. It means that we have to be sympathetic. We have to be understanding of where people are at as opposed to where you want people to be. So I want to look to the next text because I want to really build this out a little bit more. So Amy, if you could put this back up. And I don't want the time to get away from us. So I'm going to jump in here.
Yep.
And for those people at Bright Star, when I read, you will feel a special sense of sympathy to the people at Anshe Emet because I am not up to the Bright Star standard here. So just go down a little bit more to the next text, please. Okay. Come on, Amy, you can do it. Next, keep going. It's load. Oh, stop. Okay, let's go to the grasshopper concept. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the text, and Chris and I, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but let me just set it up for you, okay? They're now, just so you know, it's a 3-month journey from Goshen to Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
They're there. They've been traveling for 2 years. There's there's a lot of people with them, and they're standing on the precipice. Right? And they send 12 spies down, and the 12 spies come back to scout out the land. 10 come back and say, the land is, it's terrifying, right? And and 2 say we can do it, right? And it says here, and how do the people respond to this? And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept the whole night. And the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to him, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in the wilderness? And wherefore has God brought us out unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return to Egypt? And you see what happens here. And they said to one another, let's make a captain. Let's go back. So they were it wasn't like an idle thing. They were actually doing it. So I'm going to ask you to take the screen down and let's look at this for a moment, because what did what did the 10 spies say? They said, look, we're going to be like grasshoppers in the eyes of this people. And I don't know about you, but you read this text and say, gosh, what is wrong with these people, right? What ingrates? What are they doing? But isn't this a story, Chris, about brokenness? That aren't we expecting, they've been out of Egypt for 2 whole years. And now they're going to go and they're going to get their swords and they're going to go fight and they're going to go down into Canaan, right? Are they just too broken inside to do that? What do you think of that?
So I wonder, I think, I do believe that there are times where you can be so broken inside till everything around you looks broken. Nothing seems fixed. I think there are also times where you fight so much where you either gain too much fight or lose too much fight. It's a imbalanced kind of situation. And I think the frustration that we often have with God, our Father, sometimes builds up resentment for the path that he has us on. And I think when you look at this, and I would invite some of you in the chat to just give us your thoughts in this particular passage, right? What are your thoughts on how you would have felt? Put yourself in their shoes.
Can you actually say that you would have been with Joshua and Caleb? Or
Right.
would you have said, you know what? Where's the next Greyhound back to Egypt? I'm going back. I'm done. This is terrifying. I've got kids here. What are you kidding? At least I knew what I had there. What would you have done?
Yeah, the unfamiliar. That is, in the New Testament, we often talk about this scripture says faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Again, faith is the substance of things hoped for. I develop my faith today because I see a picture, a snapshot, a commercial advertisement of the future. So if I have faith now, it's because I believe that something does exist in the tomorrow. Now, everybody does not have that. And sometimes faith is in the minority. Let's be honest, Dr. King, everybody didn't see the dream. And when you think about it, some people call this dream a nightmare because a lot of times dreams to be fulfilled and not deferred requires work. That's why I love the scripture. Faith without works is dead. Caleb and Joshua are 2 of my favorites. And I love the age difference, to be very frank, right? I absolutely love the fact that one is ready to fight. Give me this mountain. One is saying, hey, we can go forward. And you will always be outnumbered, right? Often by those who are not necessarily dreamers, by those who don't believe in the progressive movement, or those who are not really willing to put up a fight. I don't know who I would have been at that time, but I will tell you, based on my experience, I got a feeling that I got a little bit of Joshua in me.
Okay. I love what Melanie Brown wrote. She wrote, grasshoppers are not just small, but they're jumpy. They felt scared inside. And so in a sense, even though the Bible is presenting the fact that the people of Israel are going to wander in the desert for the next 38 years as a punishment, I want to suggest to you that maybe it was an act of mercy on God's part.
Powerful.
Because with this attitude, the people were going to fail. They couldn't do it. In a sense, God is saying, I got to wait for the next generation. This generation is too broken. And I wonder about what do we do with that in the experience of African Americans? What do you do with that idea in the experience of Jews? Were we just not ready? Did this one generation have to go through this so that the next generation can rise up? In other words, maybe one generation was too broken to do it. And so we had to go forward and rise up in the next generation. What do you think?
Well, just think about it. The generation of Dr. King said, let's march and be nonviolent. This generation is making a statement that is amazing.
Mhm,
We are not our grandparents.
mhm.
In other words, we won't be putting up with it and dealing with it the way that they did. And I think you can be broken so long till it kindles fires of anger and develops and produces misguided passion. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily a condoning it, but I feel like what Dr. King said, rioting is the language of the unheard,
Right.
right? That's what Dr. King said. He was clear. He wasn't saying it's the right thing to do, but in many ways, when you are broken, you typically seek something else to break because you want it to feel
Right.
what you have felt. That cycle, hurting people tend to hurt people. That's why we have to address trauma and not just the issue.
But I want to say something, and because I see a parallel between the Jewish community and the Black community here. I think that we are often too quick to judge the generation that came before us.
Yeah.
I was a kid in 1963. I don't know if you were even born in 1963.
Do you really want to mess with me on that tonight?
I'm feeling old. Okay, sorry. You know,
I wasn't going to get you on the older jokes. I was not.
I so appreciate that. But I want to, because I'm going to pick up on something Rachel Lessem wrote in here, because, it's easy in the Jewish community, and this is going to lead us to our next thing. What is the impact of that? It's easy to look for Jews to look at the generation of the Holocaust and say, why did you march like sheep to slaughter?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what was it? Why didn't you just stand up and fight? Well, did you live in that universe? Do you know what it was actually like? They weren't brought up they weren't brought up to think like you do. They were thinking, and by the way, what was happening to them was unthinkable. It happened, but it was unthinkable. And they had nowhere to go, etc. So we have to be careful. Even, it's not a matter of how many miracles you need to see. It's also the evolution from one generation to the next, to continue to believe in the possibility of freedom, but understand that we are all on that road together. And I think it must be the same in the African-American community, the Black community. You look at Dr. King and you say, well, what the hell was he thinking about?
Right.
Right? What the hell was he thinking about? And yet, I would submit to you that without Dr. King, without his nonviolence, we wouldn't be where we are today. Maybe you disagree, but that's my own assessment.
Well, I think it's just like a cake. It takes more ingredients to make it all come together, right? I think Dr. King played his role. I think Malcolm X played his role. I think Marcus Garvey played his role. I believe that Fannie Lou Hamer played her role. I believe that all of these amazing matriarchs and patriarchs all played their role and contributed to us being able to rise, right? Still rise. I think they all contributed to the bounce back. And I think now it is our turn. I know we have about 22 minutes left, but I'd love to hear from our friends that are here with us tonight. Like what is our role now? How should we respond to where things are today? How do we pick up those mantles? And I think you're 100% Rabbi, correct, as we not be too hard on the previous generation, right? Because it is upon their shoulders that we stand. And I think we now have the responsibility to make sure that as we carry our baton on our leg of this race, make sure that it's not dropped, because there's a generation that we have to pass it to.
Right. So I don't want to just leave this without pointing out to Melanie Brown and Irene Kaminer. When Irene says, I think every generation is meaningful and builds on each other, and Melanie writes, generational curses are breaking. We need to keep breaking the curse. It is a spiritual journey as well, because the next generation is going to look back at our communities and they're going to ask, why didn't you do this, 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 and this, right? and they're going to learn from us, and we need to set that example. And I just want to underscore that idea. But let's open this up. So as to what people are, as Rachel says, and still within each generation, there are those who fought back and those who move forward. I want to just add an idea in here while people are writing. And I want to apologize for something I said at the first session. I was talking about Israel, and I was talking about intersectionality. And I made a derisive comment about intersectionality. And the point I was making is that it would take too long to develop. But part of the change that's happening today is that we live in a global society. Can you imagine that there are Black Lives Matter walks in England, Black Lives Matter walks in France? And so the world, and people are looking at each other's pain. People are looking at each other's experience. And while they're not parallel, we are learning from each other and supporting each other. And that's a statement that we ought to make. And if I gave the wrong impression about intersectionality, that was not my intention. So I just want to put that out there.
No, I appreciate it. I think it was really, really interesting. I forget what I believe it was a congressman who made a statement almost suggesting that Black Lives Matter don't care about the family. And it was another one of those generalizations of the other, right? And what it reminded me of, and you bring it up tonight, is many people need to constantly be reminded, please don't box the 3 words Black Lives Matter into an organization, right? There is an organization called Black Lives Matter, but the majority of Black people have no clue about an organization called Black Lives Matter. It is a mindset. It is a mantra. It is a statement that we should believe everybody feel, right? I could say Jewish lives matter, right? People could say all lives matter. But I think when you think about this labeling, it makes it very difficult for people to communicate. I know that's why I'm so grateful for these kinds of sessions, because I've even had a lot of my Jewish friends who said, well, but Chris, I know you sing the Hatikva, and I know you train young men on Alpha Epsilon Pi and girls on Sigma Alpha Epsilon Pi. Thank you for what you do with Rabbi Siegel, but you support Black Lives Matter. And I always respond, you should too. But I'm not talking about the organization. I'm not talking about the platform that talked about genocide and said that Israel is an apartheid state. I'm talking about the mindset that Black Lives Matter.
That's right. Right. I want to raise an issue with you, because this is all, it's about the long road forward, but we also have to recognize the hypocrisy of those who try to crush us. Yeah. And I'll explain. To be a slave in America meant that, they would change the wedding vow. To death do you part, or I forgot exactly what it was said, but death do you part, or you are distanced, or something like that. Because what it meant was your wife could be sold, right? And yet the African-American community is constantly being criticized about the family, right? And so here the standard is sort of kind of this white Protestant kind of 1950s idea of family that says, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do it? Right? And so it's this hypocrisy of turning this on its head and not recognizing the fact that African American families look different than, let's say, white families, right? But let's understand how people responded to that brokenness. Jews are often accused of being tribal. They only care about themselves. Well, if you grow up in a world where no one cares about you, and you have to take care of yourself because the world is hostile to you, then that's going to affect you, right? So where did that come from? And is that a negative thing? Is that a positive thing? How do we understand it? So often we turn, we look, it's like pouring salt in the wound. We double down on people. The Black community is so criticized over these things, and the white community doesn't look at the history to really understand how did we get here. And the same with the Jewish community, right?
Yeah.
What happened with our brokenness? What have we done with it? And where do we go from here?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. And you are courageous to raise this with 15 minutes left, right? The reality is a lot of people don't realize that the family structure of the Black community was targeted, right? It reminds me of the scripture, come, let us deal wisely with them lest they multiply and grow, right? They put laws in place where if the male lived in the home, right? These are real laws. Then the family that is already, just think about something. Families that are already struggling with systemic racist policies to make sure that the economic empowerment of African-American communities is not strong, education not strong. Then they put laws in place and said, if you make a certain amount of money, if the father lives in the home, then the family cannot get public aid assistance. So what did that do? It made fathers either vacate so that the mother and children can have some place to stay, or it made them act like a lot of people who are struggling to hide away from the immigrant issues now, right? Saying they're not living here. And a lot of people don't realize that Black fathers are not as absent as people really think. And if we're going to call out those issues, and this is statistically true, if you're going to call out the issues, if we look at stats, there are more fatherless white families than there are Black families. But what we do is we get a little bit of information, hear it on the news, we share it as if it is true, but the data is very clear. And if there are fatherless homes, because people are asking now, where are these fathers and where are these parents? Well, it's not that Black people don't want to be present, but mom's at work, dad's probably at work. Both of their salaries
That's right.
don't amount up to the cost of living in Chicago. So they're trying to work and children are free. That's not an excuse, but we got to look at some of these issues, right, that you raise up now that contribute to the deterioration of the family, the deterioration, which is the result of deterioration of the community. And now we're seeing it on a national platform.
Absolutely. I want to look at some of the things that are being said here, because when I want you to, if you help me understand better what Melanie Brown is saying, just don't say Black Lives Matter. That's a uniform color, not a race, right? What does that mean exactly?
Melanie said, just don't say
Blue Lives Matter.
Blue Lives Matter.
I didn't read it correctly.
Yeah, that's a uniform color, because a lot of times what you would find, especially in 2020, you had one side saying Black Lives Matter, and then another side saying Blue Lives Matter, as if Black people were saying police don't matter, right? When they say Blue Lives Matter, they were actually talking about the color of a uniform,
Right.
not a person.
So, right. So
Right.
This is denying your own, it's like you are denying your own pain. They're stripping you of your own pain, right? In other words, I'm not even allowed to acknowledge my pain. I'm not even allowed, we're going to universalize this, right?
Mhm.
And, listen, I got to tell you that when I read a Holocaust denier, like they're denying that, right? They're denying that pain. Or, if we can't at least acknowledge the uniqueness of the Holocaust, but it's just, it's all hate. You know what? I think African Americans we understand what hate feels like, but it's different. And I think we have to be able to stop and say, let's not homogenize the whole thing. Let's acknowledge the differences. And then I think we understand each other better, right?
For sure. When we kneel, we still die. When we march, we still die.
You're so good
Right.
at this. You're so good at this.
It's-
Every
it's
analogy,
really-
like food, it's this, and then it's like, man, how come I didn't say that?
I mean, and that's really what happens when no matter what we do, we still die, and that contributes to the brokenness. And again, I love the term Diana. Like it seems like what Dr. King should have been enough. It seemed like what Marcus Garvey did. It seemed like it would have been, but the reality is, I think in a lot of ways, we feel broken, and I don't speak for all Black people, but I do speak as a Black man. A lot of reasons we feel broken is because there is a system, we still live in a system that was designed to break us. Let me say it again. We still live in a system that was designed to break us. And so what we say to our friends is, as Dr. King said, don't be silent, right? Change the policies and fight for policies to change, right? What are the things that contribute to what we experience in our community? Help fight to change those policies,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's going to be so important in the days to come because we have come together. The question becomes, what will we do together? I love what Alice said. Alice said in the chat, you understand the other's brokenness through the behavior of those who were broken. And then I come back to my previous comment about taking responsibility for your behavior, informing my behavior. There is so much for us to learn. There is so much for us to look at. But I do think if people truly want to understand the plight of African Americans, Rabbi, the reason I'm so close to you is I didn't take you seriously at first. I told you about a book called The New Jim Crow.
Right.
3 weeks later, we got together and
Mhm.
in the car, I'll never forget it. Now we're touring Bronzeville,
Mhm.
showing you the community. And I'm sitting in the back seat, you're in the front, and you say, Chris, I want to apologize to you. I said, for what? And you told me that you read the book because our initial argument was recidivism and the penal institution and how it is set up to make sure that Black people go to jail and stay in jail. And then the book written by Michelle Alexander. And you said you read it. My heart was completely changed from that day forward because you cared enough to get informed and then you were courageous enough to get involved.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying. I want you to speak to what Taylor Morand wrote because I think it's very powerful. I'll read it and they'll give you a chance to consider it. I usually like to take my anti-racism on an individual basis and try to address it when issues come up. But I'm also wondering what more I can do. It doesn't feel like enough. And sometimes I feel like I'm not the right person to even do it because I show as a white person. And so it is even, and so it is even it's not even my fight if it's something I care about deeply. Is it even, I'm sorry, I misread it. Is it even my fight, even if it's something I care about deeply?
Yeah.
Thank you for the
first of
very
all,
candid and honest statement. Gosh, that was great.
super powerful. And I want to say thank you, Taylor. Here, I'm going to do what Rabbi Siegel did to me earlier, and I'll do it to you. I'm going to turn a statement into a question. What if I decided as a Black man that anti-Semitism was no longer my fight?
Right.
Think about that, right? Carol Makoff, who is on here today, is one of the main reasons that I'm connected to the Jewish community. I met her, right, through Michael, through our connection, but she was literally one of the first congregants who got involved in our work in a meaningful way 8 years ago, and is still connected to us today. And one of the reasons you have so many people from Bright Star that have been on these classes is they've seen Anshe Emmett show up. I can honestly admit, Michael, I'd share with you, we have Bible class we have a prayer, 6 a.m. prayer every Monday and Friday. Every Monday and Friday since the pandemic, 6 a.m. prayer. And then we have Bible class on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. And then church on Sunday. These folks are zoomed out but they're still coming on a Monday night because they know it's Rabbi Siegel and Anshe Emmett because the community showed up. Even if it was just the playground, they showed up. Even if it was just the Seder's where you made us eat that nasty herb that just, oh my God, opened up our noses in a crazy way. That took real love and commitment and connection. And so to your question, there is more that needs to be done. And yes, Taylor, it is your fight. Just like when things happen in Israel or to the Jewish community, we now feel it is our fight. But what I would challenge this group to do is don't just focus on racism. What I'd love you to focus on is anti-Blackness.
Mhm.
Very specifically, anti-Blackness, because that's a little bit more focused than just racism. Because a lot of people don't realize what we are seeing and hearing louder than we ever have is anti-Blackness. And if we don't call it out, then we will run back into our community. And here is the truth. I'll land the plane with this. I told Rabbi Siegel, we had this discussion 6 years ago. And I said, Rabbi, I'm so glad we're doing this work because here's the truth. If our Jewish friends and otherwise don't come into urban communities to help us to fix some of these issues, urban communities are going to end up coming to yours. And we saw that happen in the right.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's right. Look, I don't want this to end for a whole variety of reasons, but I want to acknowledge what we've been able to accomplish.
Yes.
I think the conversations have been great, and I'm so grateful to the partnership with you, Chris, and the partnership between our communities. These chats have been amazing, but I think that what we have to do better is really get people together to talk, right? And so I want to suggest, and I actually haven't talked to you, Chris, about this, I'm not springing it on you, but I think we should be getting together once a month. This group and kind of build off of it. And I have a couple of suggestions to make, but I would love sometime to have a conversation where we can break up into groups to talk about, like for instance, talk about what does redemption mean on Easter and what does redemption mean on Passover, and really talk about those kinds of things deeply. I'd love to watch a movie together on the history of the Black Jewish community. But I really, what I'm hoping is that we're going to start to really get in the same room with people on Zoom until we can do it physically and build on it. And so since Seymour said it's an excellent idea, it must be, right? Are you into that, Chris?
I absolutely love it. And you'd be happy to know, been thinking through some of this. We have with Rabbi Seth Limmer and his synagogue, a once a month get together like that. And so I'm 100% open to that for sure. I love Melanie's suggestion. Would love for you all to watch the history of the Black church. It speaks to the social justice piece. It's an amazing documentary that really blessed a lot of us in the Black community. It's a PBS documentary. Look it up, the history of the Black church. I think it's about four sessions. Was it 3 or 4? That is really, really amazing and enlightening. So I agree with you. It'd be great if we can watch some things together and do things together. Let's plan it. Know that I'm open. I'm all in. I'm glad to have this family.
Right. I have an idea, because we're going to have to stop in a minute. I had an idea for what we would sing, but I don't think it was the best. It wasn't the best idea because I didn't have your counsel and guidance, Chris.
Stop it.
So why don't you sing something and I'll sing something? And I'll tell you what, I'm going to sing first because I never want to follow you. Okay. I'm going to sing a song in Hebrew that some people know. It's actually a quotation from scripture. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters sit together, when they dwell together, when they engage together. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manaim shavet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shavet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shavet achim gam yachad. That's the sentiment, even though the voice might not be there.
I love your voice, Rabbi. I close with these words based on scripture, the book of Psalms. And I want to say thank you to Bright Star for joining in. Michael, this started off as the both of us as individuals. I think it is powerful.
Mhm.
We've been able to get our folks to come together
Absolutely.
3 Mondays in a row. Song says this, Lord, I will lift mine eyes to the hills, knowing my help is coming from you. Your peace you give me in times of the storm. It says, you are the source of my strength. Ooh, you are the strength of my life. And I lift my hands in total praise to you.
How beautiful was that?
Mm.
Good night, everybody, and thank you. And thank you, Chris, and thank you,
Night.
thank you, on Shamet, for making this so special.
Love you, Michael. Take
Love you.
care. Love you guys on Sham. Love
Bye-bye.
you,
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Thank you, Amy. You did a great job.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I
Thank
was-
you, Rabbi.